Metsanauris, one of the most historied veterans in all of EU RLCS, and really RLCS in general, a former world champion runner-up, has finally concluded his career, announcing his retirement this year in 2023, but he has been one of the most outstanding players throughout his entire career, being able to keep up with the best of the best until the very bitter end. Today, we get a chance to speak with Metsanauris about his entire career, about the highs and the lows, and what's next for this incredibly illustrious player. My name is Oliver Bass. I'm going to be joined by PyroJ, and we're going to get to sit down with Metsa and answer all of these questions. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the esports.net Rocket League show. My name is Oliver Bass, joined alongside by PyroJ, and another guest. We have got Metsanauris, one of the most illustrious talents in all of RLCS history, with us here today. Metsa, before we get into this one, how are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Just enjoying this Finnish summer at the moment, so it's good.
I'm gonna say it's I have to imagine your Finnish summer is a little bit calmer than when we're at. Pyro and I are both in Vegas, so it's like 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which I think is like 40 degrees Celsius. So it's a little bit boiling here, but the good thing is we get a little bit of reprieve from our day to talk to you, to sit down and ask some questions. Because Metsa, I think the number one thing on everybody's mind right now is you have just recently retired one of, like I said, the best careers in the history of RLCS. You have been around since basically the very beginning of RLCS, and now you find yourself here in 2023 after 3 different eras, from the original to online to now the open format. In a retirement, looking to go into coaching. Just kind of want to give you a floor. What has it meant to have such a long-standing career and to now have the chance to move into coaching?
Yeah, well, I've only moved into coaching in announcing it. I haven't actually like become a coach for a team or anything yet, so I can't really speak too much about that. But obviously, I think I have what it takes, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity in that sense as well. But yeah, in terms of my career, I think very proud, and like I got to live the dream for the past 6 years of anyone that's played video games ever, I think. So I think no one's gonna be like questioning that I played for 6 years, and I'm very proud to have a long career and got achievements that I could never have dreamed of. And yeah, it was great.
I'll bounce off of that real quick because Bass mentioned like the long career. You've seen many different like approaches of RLCS, I feel like. Could you maybe comment on what maybe was your favorite? I mean, I don't know that the online era and missing out on lands is gonna be like the peak of the pro experience, but like, is there any certain format or any certain thing you feel like RLCS did right and you'd like to see more of that, or just a favorite memory in terms of playing as a pro player?
I think how they do things now is the right way. Like, I wouldn't change the format or anything, but I did love the league play, and I never was against the league play format. And the nerves you get just playing for like a single match in a week is like, you don't get that experience in any tournaments anymore. You like wait the whole week just to play one game. You prepare your everything to play against that one opponent, and the nerves are like at an all-time high. And yeah, if you win that game, like you get the experience of winning, which in these tournaments you don't really get that. Where unless you win the whole tournament, you don't really get that same feeling as you do, because you can just go into the sunset and be proud that you won the series that you were preparing for, and then you move on.
That's actually interesting. I want to continue working out that, because really at a balanced point of it. Like, it was okay, 1 match per week, you prep everything for it. It's hard to replicate that moment with this format. But then with RLCS X, you had like everything going on plus the grid, and it was probably too much. Like, would you consider this format very balanced, and why you prefer it more than the others?
Yeah, I think this format is the best one, like in terms of everything. But I did love also the online era of playing the grid. If it wasn't just for the online part, then you couldn't bootcamp or anything. Like, I just love playing tournaments so often. Like, that's what we get the most joy out of, is playing those tournaments, and yeah, getting those small little windows of getting practice and then another tournament. Yeah, it's just a great time. I enjoy competing, and you got a lot of competing during that. So now that I'm thinking about it, like all of the formats, I've loved all of them. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
Fair enough.
that's the goal at the end of the day. Like we said, I mean, you had a career that was not just like, hey, let's have some fun with it. You were also incredibly successful during your time as a player as well, which I think is going to, contribute into you being able to enjoy all of the different formats. I think we would be a little bit remiss without talking about your multiple appearances at the World Championship here. I kind of just more want to speak about, I guess, what would be your final World Championship going into what was season 21-22. That was after we came out of COVID, if I'm not mistaken. The final World Championship that you were at. Going into that, how did you feel? Did you know that it was maybe going to be towards the latter end of your career? Were you still kind of feeling like, hey, let's just soak it in while we're here? Was there any sort of emotional thoughts going into that? Or was it just kind of, like you said, business as usual, take it like a competition?
I wouldn't say it was like either end of the spectrum like that, but I would say just more the last year, especially like that season that we're talking about, like I just enjoyed everything and was like going into those tournaments, especially after the first LAN of that season. I decided I'm gonna go into LAN just to like have the best experience of my life. So I didn't really stress too much about like whatever happens. I was just having a blast and giving my all to win those competitions and trying to explore the cities and everything. So yeah, I was just focused on giving it my everything and enjoying it while doing it. Didn't really know how long it's gonna last or anything like that. I was just thinking we're living in the high, just enjoy the ride.
I feel like you were able to enjoy the ride a lot with Endpoint that season. You had a lot of majors and lands to attend. Does one of those majors stick out to you as like, oh, I tried enjoying everyone, but that was amazing?
Well, I think just because we spent so much time in Dallas, I think that's the most memories, and I think we spent like 3 weeks almost there, so I got to experience a lot. So I think, yeah, that's the best part of it. But I think in terms of like cities or anything, I wouldn't take that over the others or anything. But just because we're there for so long, I got to enjoy a lot of it.
Look, as another person who was there for a multitude of weeks, I was working for the wild card stage, so I had to be there before wild card began. Yeah, it was a long time in Dallas. I commend you for being able to keep yourself resilient and enjoy the whole ride, because I will say this much, by the end of that one, I was very ready to get home from Texas. But that is not the point here nor there. Again, like you talked about, you had a really interesting career with many ups and downs. Is there any event in particular, not necessarily looking towards the open era or to the last sort of lands, that kind of sticks in your memory as sort of the highlight now that you have walked away from your competing career and, like you said, moving into more a coaching one? Is there any particular event throughout your whole career that you kind of look back upon in extreme fondness?
Yeah, of course, there's the one LAN I won. I think that's going to be a memory that you can cherish for the rest of your life, because you work so hard to get that moment. And when you actually get it after everything, yeah, that's a moment I will remember forever. And there's really not a feeling in this world that feels like that. So that was E-League 2019 that we won. So I needed to explain that as well.
I'm remembering 2019. I was like, I know he won E-League. I don't remember what year it's been, because it's been a handful at this point. It's crazy to think it's been 2019 since we last saw E-League. Just sort of side note.
It was the end of the year of 2019. It was like really late. So almost 2020.
Would you want to see that come back? Because we're hearing a lot more people talk about how they want to see circuits kind of attached to RLCS. In your opinion, if an E-League or an MLG or something similar like that came back nowadays, you think it would get the same sort of buzz? You think people would be as excited about it?
Yeah, I mean, E-League was the best tournament organizer there is, I think, in terms of the quality of the product and how they treated their players, and like everything was so top notch. Like the things they did to just make the players feel comfortable. I think the only thing that lacked in those tournaments was the crowd size, but if it wasn't for that, it was the best product of any LAN that's ever been, I think.
Damn, duly noted. Yeah, hope to see something like that again for sure. Mets, I want to switch gears just a little bit. I mean, we've highlighted a lot of moments in your long professional career. I want to kind of leverage that long successful career that you have had, in order to get your perspective on some interesting items either going on right now that's currently very popular on Twitter or what have you in the Rocket League community, or things that you've certainly commented on yourself. Obviously, this is the first time we're talking you and I, but Twitter allows us to see all kinds of people's perspectives, right? So I
Unfortunately.
want to talk about something in terms of as you get older as a professional, how it may become more difficult to find opportunities and why that is. Specifically, you mentioned that if there's a younger player and an older player that could be signed to a team, organizations are going to prefer the younger player. Why is that? And is that something that could change over time?
I don't necessarily think that organizations want the younger player. It's the players that want the younger player, because organizations want the biggest brand, which is usually the older player, if they have the same skill set and everything. But the players that want to compete at the top, they want the young gun because he has more potential to grow into even a better player than an older person has. It's just a fact in any sport or esport that a younger player has more time to develop into a better player than an old player.
I feel like there's that shift though that you could prefer an older player because they have more experience, they have more wisdom, they've gone through the rungs, they're not going to be as vulnerable to team changes and different styles. They've learned more. So that's kind of why I was curious if this would change over time, if that perspective would alter. I mean, Bass, you've even talked a lot about why you think some older players will stay in the pro scene and different things that attribute to that. So I don't know. Do you see that shift happening from the player's perspective? I guess not the org's perspective, or is that something to stay, Metsa?
Well, I think the reason people don't think like that is because there is no examples of the old players. So you see that best of the best are the young guns. So everyone's gonna be like, I want the next 16-year-old French player in my team because he's gonna be the guy that brings me to the top. And it's just like people see that as an examples, and they want to be the next part of that project. They want to see the next prospect that could do that to them. They're not gonna look at how, I don't know, how you get an old guy on a roster. Like, you get the longevity, you have like experience. Like Chaina, for example, has incredible career and he's played at the top for long, but he's never been the one to impact the team to make it to the top. It's the new pickups that change the team. And yeah, it's how people see success is what makes them do those decisions.
I will say, I think that your perspective here is probably one of the most informed and interesting, as you were the first guy to really, well, I guess your team as a whole was the first team to give Seiko a chance after his ban, coming back out of his ban after RLCS had restricted him for a year off. You guys at Endpoint picked him up and kind of saw the highest highs. Now looking at where Seiko has gone to become a world champion, now going into this year, kind of revitalizing himself at the end of the year with the move for Rise. Just kind of want to get your perspective on him and sort of the future with him. Are you proud to see how, the heights that he has risen to and sort of the future that he has cemented himself? So just sort of, I guess, your perspective on him as a whole.
Absolutely. I love that kid. I think he brought so much joy to us, and the success we got is a large part because of him. And he was a great teammate. I've had teammates and prospects on my teams before that are not great teammates, but I don't have a single bad word to say about Seiko. He is just a pure soul of happiness, and he wants that to spread, I think, around him as well. And it was very comfortable being in a team with him, even though he was the shining star and he got the whole spotlight, but it never felt like uncomfortable or anything. I think he's a great guy, and I truly wish the best for him. And I'm so proud of him for what he's achieved already after being together with him.
That is the glowing review if I've ever heard one. Most people will see somebody like that and they've at least got like a little nitpick, like, hey man, he chewed with his mouth open or something. You're just like full way through happiness, like very proud. Dude, this is why I gotta say, European Rocket League, again, just better. Like, there's a North American player out there who saw somebody trade teams and is just bitter about that. You guys just better mentality. I swear, man, I swear.
Let's sit on that. Mets, I'm gonna send this to you because we're talking about EU's just better. In the last major, it certainly appeared to be that way. It was a landslide victory for the region of EU. You yourself, as a professional player from EU, a veteran that's now retired, is this something you saw coming? Like is this a expected result in terms of an international major, or like is that going to continue in Worlds and beyond? Like, what's your perspective in terms of EU's region, its talent compared to the rest of the world?
I think it just comes from the whole player base in Europe. You have these different regions. I think it was coming for a long time, and it's happened already before, and I think it will still happen in the future. Where it's not that Americans don't have young talents, but it's kind of the same to think if America or NA had like multiple different countries with different cultures, and all of them nurture different kind of talent, and the best come through. I think that's a thing why you see also it's a big culture in Europe, football in general. So Rocket League is popular in the countries where football is popular. So Spain, France, England, and that's where you get the most young talents, because you got the player base that wants to be the best, and it's like encouraged in those countries to play football games, and it's like a culture thing already to them. And the player base from each country comes through. You want to compete against your own country, and you become better, and at some point you're good enough to do anything in the world stage. Yet that, like at that point, your country is just a flag on the stream. But I think it comes from all those regions, and that's why you don't see a lot of top pros come from other countries that are not from England, France, Spain anymore, or speak those same languages, which is a really important factor in the same way as well.
I kind of actually want to press a little bit more upon that as well. You talk about how, it's different cultures, but you guys are still kind of connected by the drive for competition. Like you mentioned, North America has that drive for competition, obviously, but there aren't as many sort of, I would say, rivalries being built out of that. Yes, you've got East versus West in North America when it comes to not only the regions that they are within, but also, CRL, I think, also fosters that a lot as well with up and coming talent. But like you mentioned, individual countries even have their own leagues. I used to work for, I want to say it was called the Nordic League or something similar with, I think it was, Sweden, Netherlands, and a couple other guys sort of all combined together who had their own individual league for just the competing players out of that country. You don't really see that in North America as much. Now, granted, I do think that it's interesting how there are language barriers, but even for you, you teamed with a French player last season. Do you think those language barriers and that sort of difference within cultures makes it better for you guys, or do you think it sometimes can get in the way? In comparison to North America, do you think it's going to be something that can ever be captured by a country like America and Canada, where they're all speaking the same language and they are, for the most part, relatively connected with little differences within the cultures? Or do you think that it is actually a bonus for EU to have those differences to kind of push them and drive them further?
I think the language thing is only a problem if there isn't any teams that can get you. Like if your English is not good enough to play in a team that is international, that's gonna limit your options, right? But apart from that, like being your only limiting factor, I think it's only a bonus being in a region, because you kind of have this cultural like trust towards your countrymates, and you see all the French people like Seiko. After being with us, he wanted to join the French team, and that's like a culture that combines them, and everyone wants to be the best French team, and it's you play for your country at that point. So yeah, I think it drives people, and just different cultures have their own different set ways, and then you can like compete against the other ways within Europe, because you play in ranked or 6 months or scrims and whatever. You learn about the other cultures' ways as well, compared to US. If there's only one set culture and way, you can only learn so much from seeing the same thing that you're doing.
Well, you see, the good thing is the US is going to start learning new styles because we have so many imports, and now we
Okay,
just
that's where I
get
was
to
going.
cultivate all those different talents. Yeah, no, that's the only way I can figure out that to work. That and us, well, of course we call it soccer. I'm sorry, Metza, but us getting more into soccer from, you know, preschool, which is just like halftime and oranges, and that's all that we do. There's no culture there at this point. Not yet, not yet. But that's good advice here for other regions to stand up to the test of what EU has to offer. Appreciate that, Metza. I don't know
think
about you, Bass.
also
Oh yeah, please.
one thing about that, I think that like people that have come from Europe to play in NA, what it looks like to me, a lot of the time they adapt to the NA playstyle instead of the other way,
Oh,
because
Interesting.
you're kind of forced to play within the rules of the region. I think you're gonna get like caught out a little bit, and you kind of adapt to what everyone else is doing around you as well. So it looks to me as if
I
all the
agree.
teams that move to NA kind of change their playstyle to more of what they do.
So what's interesting about that though is that a lot of those teams that have more imports, they're performing really well in North America, right? But then we just had the major, which at the international stage, they're not performing as well against the EU teams. So would you say that that forced shift into playing more of an NA play style may help them within their region but hurt them internationally?
I think so. Like in the long run, yeah. Like at the start, coming from Europe, for example, and you get the best of the Europe playstyles and move to North America and get your stuff together, and then you adapt to them a little bit and you understand how they think. I think that is good for you. But then in the long run, I think the more you're adapting to only the NA playstyle, that's gonna make you worse.
I gotta say this is why I'm happy to have a mind like yours on here, Metza, because again, it's a long thought out process. A lot of other people aren't thinking about the long term when it comes to those little play style changes, but here you are again. It's predictions for the future. I have a feeling in a couple years from now, when we're looking at our LCS, a lot of what you're saying right now very much going to be relevant then. So we do appreciate you coming on here. Before we do wrap up this interview, I gotta ask your opinions for the World Championship upcoming. I mean, we are literally only a couple of weeks away. I think we have people traveling to Germany as soon as next week. Predictions, I guess, not necessarily looking for an overall sort of ranking of everybody, but I guess the more prominent question here, who's taking it home? And I guess sort of attached to that, is anybody stopping Vitality? Or is it just Zen's going to go and win his first 5 events in a row?
I think it's gonna be really hard to predict because I think Vitality is the favorite, I think, and I backed them to win the major, but I don't know if I backed them to win the worlds because they kind of have that monkey in their back. That's like the massive
Yeah.
thing. It's a big hurdle to cross, especially in this format, I feel like. So I think what I would guess, this is just a early prediction, a bold prediction. I think I would say BDS are
I
gonna
knew
win.
he was
in
gonna
my
say
opinion.
BDS. I knew he
You
was
think
gonna
back
go
to
with his
back? You
boy
think they're doing it
Seiko.
twice?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
I've
can
seen it
see it.
before.
Yeah.
I've seen it before when a team gets that first Worlds win. Uh, Second time Worlds comes around, there's no hurdle for them. They're the ones in the final where they're playing out of their minds, and the other team are crumbling a little bit.
I mean, look, I can't disagree by any stretch. Not to mention also now they have Rise at the helm, probably one of the most steadfast players in the entire league. Who again, he hasn't won a major or a LAN since Moist last year in London, and I mean he's spoken extensively about how much it hurt to lose at the World Championship in the fashion that they did at Furia. So. Look, I'm with you on this one. I think BDS has got a run back upcoming here. I definitely do think Zen and Vitality are going to give him a run for their money. But, I mean, look, Pyro, I'm agreeing with him. I don't know about you.
I can't disagree. I mean, I want to see Monkey Moon at the top of everyone's, world leaderboard again. I really do. I mean, he already argued for that spot from the last major. It just took a little bit of time for them to complement each other with Rise and Seiko. So, here we are with a team that's just going to get better and better once they get to Worlds. So, What, you think I'm gonna talk to Metsa for the first time and then disagree with him, Bass? Like, really? No, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
we got to add a little bit of spice here. But that being said, spice over now. And so is the interview. Again, Metsa, we really do appreciate you coming through and speaking to us here today. This was an absolute pleasure to get to hear your insights, to hear about your career, and hear about what you think about the current scope of RLCS. And again, I got to say, I really do agree with you on pretty much everything that has been stated. The NA versus EU battle continues to wage on, but it's always nice to hear some insights from players that have been within that battle before and know a lot about the scape. Before we do an exit on out of here, any shout-outs you maybe want to give, anything you want to say, last words before we conclude?
Nothing too much. Just thank you for the interview. I think, yeah, I hope people see this and get some ideas to get me as a coach. But if not, you can also find individual coaching from me from my socials. You'll find the links. So yeah, trying to get to work here soon.
Well, we appreciate you coming through here and working with us today on this interview. I absolutely, look, if your insight's anything like that in the coaching sessions, I'll be sending you to every single friend that I have ever met, every player in EU, and I promise you, I know at least a couple of them at this point. So, again, Metsa, we really do appreciate you coming on. To everybody at home, this has been the esports.net Rocket League show. My name is Otto Metsanauris, alongside by PyroJ, and obviously Metsanauris down there at the end. We will see you guys next time. Have a good one.